Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of GenX. I am Sensei, and I'm here with my good friend.
Master Roshi.
And today we're going to discuss social media and our mental health. Many studies have shown that low levels of social media usage are associated with better mental health. Spending too much time on social media can affect not just our mental health, but also our physical health as well. Heavy usage of social media and digital devices could negatively affect the quality of our sleep, and too much social media can cause headaches and vision problems. So I am super excited to introduce to you our very first guest to our show to help us lead the way, Susan Misdom, a millennial, a school counselor for kindergarten to eighth grade, a creator and content producer for her lifestyle blog, simplymisdom.com. She is Vietnamese American. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and a master's degree in counseling. Susan resides in New Jersey with her husband. One fun fact about Susan is that she attended Jane Addams High School in the Boogie Down Bronx, like Master Roshi did. So, in your blog, Susan, Simply Wisdom, folks, please check her blog. It is super informative. One of the many topics that you cover in your blog is social media detox. But before we dive into it, how have you been, Susan, during these difficult times in this pandemic?
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for that introduction. This year, to say that it is quite a year is an understatement for sure. It's challenging in so many different ways, but at the same time, it is opportunity for us to really show what we can do during hard times and how we can come together and face these challenges. But I definitely am doing my best to take on 2020. How are you guys doing for 2020?
I'm fantastic. I'm super excited of where 2021 is going to take me, especially now in this new venture along with Master Roshi in promoting our podcast as well as our YouTube channel. But yes, it has been difficult for me as well for a bit, but I'm writing it out. I think I'm getting adjusted to the new way of life, and I'm moving forward. That's all we can do.
I agree.
I think you're my spokesperson there. I think I share a lot of the same sentiments. With that being said, I am looking forward to what's going to happen with this podcast next year. We're hoping to get more interviewees in the podcast. We'll see, how things normalize back to the office. If that's going to happen or if it's going to be most likely probably a hybrid model. We'll probably resume some activities. So yeah, just looking to see what 2021 is going to bring. It's right around the corner, so it's going to be, some improvements. We'll see. We'll see if that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much, Master Rocha. Fantastic. So, Susan, help me out here.
Yeah.
I already have an idea. I think I might be partially addicted. But how can you help us out here? How do we know we're addicted to social media? Do you have any signs that we should be looking out for?
So there are very common red flags when it comes to if you are addicted to social media. And just to kind of go back and talk about how we started with even lockdown and how we started to really start utilizing and depending on our social media. But even prior to that, there are red flags for people who are using social media as a source of communication. But the red flags are, for example, when you start to feel uncomfortable without your phone. So if you don't have your phone with you, if you're not constantly checking social media, you feel anxious. You feel like you're missing out. You feel like that's not part of your routine. Your level of productivity is out the window. So the things that you should be getting done and accomplished, and you're not because you're spending time scrolling on your phone, and it could be something as simple as checking a quick message, checking to see what your friends and family are doing, and then it turns into an hour or two just scrolling through and looking at your different social media platform. And it can also start affecting your sleeping habits. So that's another red flag where you are spending not only hours from your days, but you're taking hours from your sleep to look at your social media. The first thing you wake up is to look at your social media. The last thing before you go to bed is you look at your social media. And some people even bring the social media with them into bed and they'll fall asleep with it. It starts to affect your relationship with your friends and family because you're relying more on social media than actually communicating with people face to face, and all those soft skills are not being used. And one of the biggest one I would say for a red flag when it comes to being addicted to social media is how it makes you feel about yourself. You start to compare your standards with that false sense of what is perfect, what is the standards that you should be attaining was being set by society. And your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-value is being affected. And there's a lot of negativity that can come from that. And people, unfortunately, they hurt themselves. They do things that they shouldn't because of how they feel because of social media.
So it's almost like like a drug addiction where it starts off slowly. One puff is not gonna hurt, and then two puffs, and then three puffs, and then all of a sudden you're addicted to something. And I think that's kind of what happens here, where you just say, well, but what's the big deal? I'm just gonna scroll for one quick minute, and that's it. But then you scroll for 1 minute, 2 minutes, and now you forgot what the reason was of why you got online, and now you got distracted, and now you're looking at other feeds, and you might even perhaps be comparing your own life to feeds that don't even exist.
Yeah.
And I think you made a very good point, Susan, because of the pandemic, because of the quarantine, we are now spending a lot more time on social media because we are bored.
Yeah.
So now it just adds to what, like you said, it just adds to an already existing problem. It adds more to it because now we have less stimuli in our lives, and we are constantly seeking for new stimuli. And we think, you know what? Let me find something fast. Let me find something simple, and it's right on my phone, as opposed to maybe seeking other ways like reading a book, going out for a walk,
Yes,
uh,
exactly.
going to the gym. Uh, the hard things. We
Yeah.
like to, but instead we like to go into the easy things. So I can see how this can affect our sleeping habits considerably because in addition to the fact that you're checking the social media, you're also you're looking at this white light. Is it white light or blue light? I think is
The
what they
blue light,
call
yes.
the blue light, and that also affects our internal nervous system
Hmm.
and how we react to things. So, but it's so unfortunate because we are prey. I think we are prey to a greater domain. And for
Hmm.
example, we have Facebook, trillion-dollar companies who owns Instagram and WhatsApp now. They continuously exploit and vie for our attention through these platforms. So besides the regular, the regular marketers that are constantly seeking our attention to buy things, now we have also these other social media platforms that are also battling for our attention.
Yes.
And the
Very
design and the
true.
apps are designed to trap us through notifications, through our shopping. How how can we combat that? To have some to have again some self control, I guess, in helping us in this difficult path that we're on now.
Yes. So social media is, a part of our life, and we can't deny that. And we can't completely remove that from our life because social media is used to communication. It's part of our business, right? People who have businesses use social media. It's a money making platform as well. And the first thing I would encourage is to educate yourself on how social media work, what it's used for, and what are the things that you should be doing to limit yourself on social media use. So, for example, I had a conversation with my fellow colleagues, and they were talking about a documentary they were watching about social media, and they came in and they said, did you know about this? Did you know that they're doing all these things to keep our attention, even down to the notification and the sounds that they use to keep you engaged? And we had a really great conversation, and my colleagues were saying, now that I know that, I'm going to limit myself. I'm going to limit my children. So just listening to that shows that when you are educated on the topic, it gives you the power to then really take that control back for yourself and to protect yourself.
Such a great point, Susan, because that is true. At least as an adult, you can take charge and you can take control by you being aware, by you being educated. I I didn't know about social media. Of course, I'm slightly older than you. But I was introduced to social media in my late 30s. Okay, late 30s. Let's go with late 30s.
All right, we'll go with that.
Yes, and um, and because of it, and although I got introduced to it in my late 30s, at this age, I am somehow partially addicted, and I have to constantly battle this. But for yourselves, for the millennials who were introduced to social media during, I don't know, eighth grade, seventh grade, or fifth grade, or something along those lines,
Yes.
it's a lot more difficult, to stop because that's what you've known, and as you get older, you have to take a really conscious effort into exhibiting a different type of behavior. You
Yeah.
know, well, you have to be 21 years old to drink. You have to be 18 years old to enlist in the armed in the armed forces. But you could be any age to pick up a phone and get behind social media. And I think that's going to be even more difficult as we move forward because now we have our millennials who are having children, and the Generation Y or Generation Z, uh, they're going to be introduced. They're being introduced to social media from birth. So that should be an interesting topic as
Yes,
well.
it definitely. I'm glad you brought that up with the generational difference and how they were exposed to social media. And just to kind of relate back to even my family, where growing up for me, having a computer was in like middle school. Like I grew up with floppy disk. The platform that we were really introduced to was MySpace, and I have find now that my own parents, who has never really had used social media, is now using it themselves. And it's not because I'm introducing them. It's just now they're having interest themselves. But just to see that now I had to teach my parents and educate them on the usage of social media. So, for example, I would say to them, not everything you read on there is real. So my mom had, recently discovered Facebook, and she is in love, right? She loves to read all the the articles that people post, and I'm like, you have to be careful what you read online. And she's looking at pictures of families and friends, and next thing you know, she's looking at pictures of people that's not even related to us, or people that she does has no idea who they are. And it's just it's scary how social media is affecting different generations, even though the young generation is so accessible to social media, but they know what to do. I mean, there's still the pros and cons, but for like the older generation, it's interesting to see how it's also affecting them as well.
Right, them trying to catch up to what me and you sort of saw that progression of, and Sensei as well. Because we were kind of like the early adopters, right, in terms of all this, and now I'm starting to see some of those attributes in the next generation in terms of my daughter, and I'll elaborate a little bit on some of the issues that I've kind of come across, and let me know if you've seen this because you're dealing with K through 8, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I want to ask you is like, what are some of the things that you're seeing? Because for me, one of the things that I'm seeing with my daughter is right now she's on punishment because she was um, looking at something that she was doing something she wasn't supposed to be doing on her computer. So as a result, we decided to take away TV, video games, pretty much anything related to being on the screen. And it's been like a week. And during this week, it's been difficult. She just keeps saying, "What am I gonna do? I'm bored. Um, what is there to do?" And she's giving me all these questions like she wants me to figure that out for her
Mhm.
when, there's other things available. She can draw, she can write, but because she's been so programmed to do that stuff, it's so hard to pull away. And I know that it's not social media, right? But those tools related to that are there. So that's one of the things that I'm having to to face right now with her. When I kind of got introduced into it, and I think you made a great point earlier, is that before all this stuff came out, we knew what that was like. We knew what
Yeah.
that world was like. And now that we're in this new world, because we know that, we can, we have the ability to unplug, right? Because we know what that feels like. But these kids, it's becoming more and more difficult because they're giving phones earlier and earlier. For me, real quick, is I don't want to give my daughter a phone until she's like 18 because that's when I got my first phone, and that just helped me, avoid so many pitfalls that could have happened. So tell me about some of the things that you're seeing with K through 8, and the kids uh, in your career.
I love that you brought up that example because that is exactly what a lot of like my parents at my work are struggling with is social media and their children. So what is the age that is appropriate for children to start using social media, or even just their phone and tablets, or even just playing games on there? The, the parents that I talk to are finding it really hard to help their children kind of resist that peer pressure from the other kids who are able to be on social media at an earlier age or be able to have a phone or tablet earlier. And the parents are trying to explain to their children like you're too young, you don't need it. There's a lot of bad things out there. There's a lot of bad people out there, and having to deal with that themselves, trying to explain to their younger children. And as an educator, you also try to explain to the students and the children that the things that you do out there stays out there, and it can also come back to the school. Just because you go home, you're on your social media, doesn't mean it won't come back and affect you. Um, it's it really is a challenge when I see students so used to scrolling with their fingers, like everything is touch screen, and
Right.
when they're taking a test for us, like on the computer in the school, for example, and they don't know how to use the mouse because they're so used to touching the screen and they were not taught any of those other skills, or even just writing too. They're so used to typing and texting that you can see it in their handwriting. You can see that they're not practicing those skills, those fine motor skills.
And I just want to add to that. It's kind of hilarious because I've seen things, um, in the last couple of years where parents can send their kids to a camp where they're not allowed to use electronics, right? Which is what camp is supposed to be anyway, you know? So I just find that kind of funny and interesting.
I remember reading an article now, it's been a while, but I remember reading an article about how there are a lot of people who work for like big companies, like the social media companies and um, other technology companies that are not, they're choosing to not send their kids to schools where they're on the computer. They're sending their children to schools where they're learning all the basic foundation that doesn't involve technology. And that to me was
Wow.
very blown how that's what they choose to do, but yet that's what they do for their work.
Right. Taking it a step further, and I think Sensei, you've mentioned this before, where just bringing you back to basics. I think that's one of your key themes. Whenever we speak, is that we sort of lose sort of aspect of that.
Yeah, sometimes what I like to say is that less is more. We get so bombarded with things, and we think, by adding something else is going to make things better. But
Hmm.
in reality, sometimes by removing things, it makes things better. But let
Right.
me ask you this, because I'm curious, right? Because so, for example, I grew up with a single parent, okay, and so my mother, my father abandoned us, and now it was my mother and four kids,
Hmm.
uh, on our own, and she had to work uh, two full-time jobs, okay, and she didn't get home until 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. Now, for me, it was an escape. She didn't have to get home until 11 p.m. That means that I was out playing with my friends until 10:59 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, from the moment I got out of school, and that presented my own personal challenges. Okay, I started hanging out with the wrong kids and all of that stuff. But now I'm curious because I had that experience. I'm assuming that people with certain economic challenges uh, may have a similar experience where they may not be home with their children as much. And now these kids are unsupervised and they have easy access uh, to social media. Do you seen perhaps a trend where perhaps you might feel that folks from a lower economic society may have perhaps a greater social media challenge because of it?
I absolutely would definitely see that just from my own personal experience. And I myself grew up with working parents. Like they're working full days and they don't come home until 7 p.m. or so. And I remember growing up and we were taught to really take care of ourselves because they were busy, out working, and we were left to our own devices. We had our social media, we had our video games. I was fortunate enough to be, I mean, I grew up in the Bronx, but I was fortunate enough to be in a neighborhood that I was able to go out and interact with the kids in the neighborhood, play outside. But seeing like my own family, my own relatives, like my younger generations, like my cousins, my friend, and their younger generation, they're so reliant on social media because, like you said, that is their source of entertainment. They don't have someone to take them out to, after school programs or after school sports if they live in a certain area that they cannot get to. And it can be dangerous. Like I remember, going to all these after school programs on my own because my parents were working constantly. But it was dangerous, like walking home late at
Hmm.
night. I try to stay with a group of friends, and it's easier for students and children just to say, forget it. I'll stay home. I'll be on my phone and I'll be on my tablet and my video games. And that's my way of spending time with my friends. And it's unfortunate, like you said, they're losing that foundation, like the basic. And it really is a challenge. And it also comes back to, the education piece, where if the parents are more educated on what's going on, what's happening, and then I think this is why it's so important that we're bringing awareness to this topic to people so that they know it really is an issue.
Right. So as you mentioned before, Susan, you have a blog and you've written about social media detoxing. Can you
Yeah.
please share with us and the audience some of the things that you've mentioned there, some of the steps listed there that can help people out there looking to get away or maybe lower the amount of social media that they've been, addicted to or using? So can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things that we can focus on is, for example, in education, right? Learning about what we can do to limit ourselves, and that it comes down to also time management. So it's so easy to just go down that spiral of just, social media, and it comes back to some self-discipline. And you have to start off small. Like, this is not a change that happens overnight, but you can do it by just challenging yourself. So on my blog, for example, I gave an example of a 7 days challenge that you can start off with, and people can up that with a 14 days challenge, a 30 days challenge. And what this challenge is basically where they give you tasks or goals to complete. Some of these tasks are like, for example, unsubscribing to newsletters on your emails that you don't read, and you're getting bombarded by it. Staying off social media until a certain amount of time, so that you're limiting when you're going on and when you're going off. You can also go onto your phone and have your notification turned off, so that you're not constantly listening for that to check your phone. There are options on social media for you to go on and temporarily like close your account, so that there's no temptation to go and check your social media. And just being able to just give yourself a break from social media is like the first step. This way you actually have the time to do other things and respark an interest in old hobbies or unfinished projects. And this way you know that there's other source of entertainment, there's other things that you can do aside from social media.
Right now, I'm going through a deep, sort of like a detox in a
Okay,
way. Okay.
tell us
Uh,
more.
and I usually, so I decided to do is I turn off my phones now at 8 p.m. I turn off my phone at 8 p.m. and I don't turn it back on until 8 a.m. And so I put a reminder with Alexa, hey, at this time I suppose, remember to turn off your phone. And uh, and that has helped me. I've noticed that this is my first week doing
Yeah.
it. Um, After discussing our points that we were going to discuss today, last week, on social media detox, I said, let me try this, and I got to tell you, Susan, I feel so much better because in the morning, I'm usually an early riser. I work out. I like to spend time on me before I can go ahead and give myself to the world. And so what I will find myself doing is that the first thing I will do is check out WhatsApp and see who was hanging out yesterday, and
Uh,
uh, and who was doing
Shame
what.
on you, Sensei.
And I know, so my first thought is one of anxiety, right? It's one of perhaps disappointment, uh, maybe anger, because there are feeds there that are also people that I like and people that I don't like. So now I know what people that I like are doing and people that I don't like are doing. So everything is magnified times a million or 1,000 or whatever the case may be. So by removing myself from that and not seeing it in the first couple of hours in the morning has allowed me to go through a different awakening process where now I feel a little bit less anxiety.
oh, that's
Uh, I,
great.
yeah, I feel a little, and by not doing it at night, but I gotta tell you, Susan, it's hard because I keep picking up the phone and then I see that it's off. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, it's off, and I gotta put it down again. But I
Hmm.
go through this times in the morning and several times at night. But I am seeing the difference, and I'm gonna stick to that, and I'm gonna follow some of your steps as well.
Oh,
so
that's
I can remove
good.
some of those notifications, so I can continue in this journey of detoxing. And then maybe by doing this, it can give me the strength of detoxing in other ways, in other areas of my life, because I will feel confident that I was able to do this, and I can take that confidence into a new challenge
Yes.
in my life.
That's
But
great. I'm glad you're doing it for yourself as well. For my own life, I do take a look and just reflect on what I'm doing, how much social media I'm using. So on my phone, it shows me how much I've been on there, like how many screen time I've been on per day. So they'll show me like a notification just to give me a highlight of how long I've been on my phone. And that had been like awakening for me to see, oh wow, like I've been on there for a long time. If you don't track your time, you don't realize how much time you're on there. So I started, for example, I love reading, and I started reading on my phone because to me it was a convenience piece, right? So you don't have to worry about carrying around books. But I started reading on my phone, it had only reinforced my habit of being on my phone too much. So then I go and sign up for a library card and went to my local library and started reading physical books. I keep my book by my nightstand so that I don't just reach for my phone, I reach for my book. And this way, those are just good habits. Social media was brought into our life, and it's not going to be easy to just remove. And the goal is not to really remove social media, it's to have a healthy balance. People think, oh, well, I need to be on so I can stay connected. I need to be on so I know what's going on. But the thing is, when you're having a social media detox, it's to actually give yourself an opportunity to connect or reconnect with yourself and other people.
And
yeah,
Susan, so the first 2 weeks seems to be the most difficult for people, and that's usually what they recommend is about 2 weeks to kind of detox everything, let go of the phone. I love what Sensei does. Unfortunately, that'd be difficult for me to do because I work in IT,
Hmm.
so I can't be away from the phone too much, but it would be a great accomplishment if I could turn it off and then look at it. Be kind of hilarious if I'm looking at it and it's not on, but it's a
yeah,
good reminder too, that you have to stay away from it. So within that 2 week period, like you mentioned, Sensei, you feel a little bit of anxiousness from the fact that you're not using it. One of the things I want to talk about to kind of move the conversation along a little bit is within that detox period. And I told Sensei this a long time ago, and he kind of laughed because one of the things that has stuck with me for a long time is that, before social media, I would like to call people. I would literally pick up the phone, see how you're doing. I still like to do that. And it's kind of funny because, I still do it, but it's interesting because that amount of time that you spend talking to someone could probably be more than you would be talking to them through text, and other means and things like that. So, in terms of those relationships with friends like Sensei and family, talk a little bit about like how those things sort of come back to bringing meaningful value to those relationships with your family and friends, during that detox period. How do you feel? How much better do you feel and things like that?
So similar to like when you have an exercise routine,
Mm.
you will be more successful when you have discipline for yourself and if you have a system in place that will motivate you, either a reward system or even a buddy system. So I always explain to people, no matter what you decide to take on, see if you can find a friend or someone that you know that will take that challenge on with you. So
Mm.
that helps reduce some of your anxiety. You feel you have a support system, so you're going through something together and you're not by yourself. You're not the only one that need a social media detox. And that first 2 week is tough, and it's just like anything, you have to be uncomfortable in order to accept the change. That's just part of the process, the part of change. So get yourself a buddy. Get someone that can actually help you to kind of go through that journey with you.
You want to be my buddy, Sensei?
Of course, Master Roshi.
Oh, thank,
Uh,
thank.
you, know, you know, you know, it, we, the moment we get up, we are constantly, our attention is being pulled in every direction.
Yes.
You know, from the moment we turn on the TV, the news wants our attention. The moment we look at our phone, it wants our attention. We go outside and someone asks us for a direction to go somewhere, they want our attention. We take a walk and we see, you know, a billboard, it wants our attention. So everywhere we go, we are constantly being bombarded with attention seekers. And so we are being influenced in our decision making. We are being influenced in our diets. We are being influenced in our feelings. We are constantly being influenced, and we forget who Sensei is. Who is Sensei? You know, because the moment I get up, I'm everyone's Sensei, but I'm not my own.
Yes.
So by removing, by detoxing, and having some time where you can perhaps think out loud or think in quietness without any stimuli, perhaps you might be able to find what you really want and what you really are passionate about, and now you may create even healthier goals for yourself because you're not being influenced on by anybody else. So I think by detoxing, it can help you. It can allow yourself to know who you were at one point in your life.
Yes. Yes.
You
Preach.
know, there you go. And, and and one of the things that perhaps that can help, you know, along with Susan, with with her wonderful tips, is that create micro habits. You know, like right now, I'm doing it from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'm using it. I'm using my phone. Um, but turning it off completely, it's not going to be effective. So I have to create a micro habit. So right now, I tell Master Roshi, I work out every day. Uh, but I didn't start with an hour routine. I started with 1 minute and
No, that's good.
doing some jumping jacks and a couple of push-ups before taking a shower was exhausting to me. But by building that discipline, like you mentioned earlier, and by doing it one step at a time and creating those micro habits became part of my life. So by being aware and by exercising those new habits, you can let go of of some of the aspects of your old self to create a new one, and perhaps even more productive self as well.
Yes, it's
So
all about balance, right? It comes down to, like you said, we can't completely remove social media from our life. It's integrated into everything we do. It's just a matter of making sure we are not overindulging ourselves and losing, touch with reality, losing, connection with people in our life, and not knowing who you are because you start to compare yourself to the standards set by social media. And like I try to tell my parents, not everything is real on social media. Not everything is real online. And just reminding yourself, and it's not easy. It's challenging. That's for sure. But with little steps, we can do it. We can
yeah,
definitely do it. I think 2020 was not easy, but we're getting through it.
Yeah, and I would say that it's interesting because like I read an article from the New York Times some time ago, and
Hmm.
this was the freakiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they were able to generate people, right? Real live looking people, but they were never real. So they had these images of people that did not exist whatsoever, but they looked completely real. So just imagine if you were to create profiles of those people in social media and make other people believe, that those people really exist.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into the next point that I'm trying to make is that, one of the things that we often see in social media are these fake sort of you know portrayals of people that are living these lavish, luxurious lives, but in essence they're not really happy. It's just sort of a real scam, honestly. But we feel like we need to compare ourselves to those people because maybe we're trying to compete in the world, and we see this as not part of the friends or family that we have, right? But we have to strive to be like this person. And sometimes I see that myself, like not so much on social media, but like on YouTube. There's a lot of people that have come up through YouTube, and they're famous or very rich and things like that. And so I think that imposes such a gargantuan kind of lofty expectation that you have to be like this person, which is not necessarily true. So, so could you talk a little bit about like those expectations that we have and how we're trying to compare ourselves to these fictitious versions of what we think our best self really is, but it's not?
Mm-hmm. So, definitely my students are struggling with social medias and comparing themselves and thinking that the lifestyle that's on social media is what they should be attaining for. And, education piece where I explain to students that there's more to life than just being a personality for on a YouTube channel or on Instagram and TikTok. When you have a certain amount of people who make money off of it and they really portray that in social media, that's the only image that you get, right? So then people start to absorb that and think, oh, so that's what you can do with social media. That's how much money you can make with social media. And I want that. And they think it's easy. They think it's some sort of shortcut even. When I talk to students and I do career days and I ask them, like, what would you like to do, as a career? And I used to get answers, all sort of different answers, but the most common thing I'm starting to get now is I want to be a YouTube star. I want to be an Instagram personality. I want to be famous by having my own platform. Like that's that's where they believe is the fame and the fortune is from. And it comes back to, I remember in high school there was a poem in class that talks about, it's a very short poem. It was about a gentleman who was loved by everyone. He has got it all. He's good looking. He's rich. He's smart. He has everything he wants. And then one day he just commits suicide. And it shows up, the betrayal that someone shows you on the outside, you don't know what's going on inside. So all the things that you see on social media looks great, but you don't know their struggles behind screen. So going back to, I believe, 2020, even the year before, where there were a lot of suicide by celebrities, very high profile celebrities that end up committing suicide. And you think, well, they have so much money. Why aren't they happy? Why would they end their lives? And people don't realize that the mental health is so important that it doesn't matter how much fame or money you have, mental health is still real. You don't cure that with money. You cure that with help and support. So that is the struggle that I'm dealing with right now with my students. It's the standards that social media is setting, and they think that's what they should attain.
Suzanne, you mentioned celebrities who committed suicide, and the celebrity that came to mind was one that I grew up with, Robin Williams. He, I ever since I was a kid, he had this show, Mork and Mindy, and I laughed with this man for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And to one day find out that he decided to commit suicide, I almost took it personal. Like it really hurt me because this is a man that I loved from being a teenager to seeing movies of him with my own child later on in life,
Yes.
and so I felt like I grew up with him along the line, and to find out that he committed suicide was devastating. And you're right. We have to be aware of our mental health. Just because people have more money, more status, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're living a better life.
Mm-hmm.
They just have a life with more money, but the same emotional challenges are still there. Economic challenges may not be as much, but emotional challenges, they're there and they're very real. Master Roshi, you had mentioned about this illusion that people create. I myself have been a witness to that through my own friends. Um, Sometimes they're in the middle of a fight, and I find it hilarious,
Okay.
Suzanne and Master Roshi, because I see them that they're struggling, they're in the middle of a fight, but someone takes a picture, fight stops. They post for the picture with the most sincere smile. After they post the picture, they go back to fighting. Uh,
Oh,
and
wow.
and yes, yes. And I have also seen people who, because I was in the dance world before this whole thing started, and I did dance shows and all that good stuff. But something that I also seen is that I might be in a lounge and someone might be sitting all night and not dancing, just sitting there with a pouty mouth, and someone passes by, they get up, they take a picture with them, and then they go back to sitting down. They post a picture, they go back to sitting down, and then when you look at their profile, he, they're among many people. They're smiling. They have drinks in their hands. But when I'm looking at them, they're
Yeah.
by themselves, and there's nobody around them, and it kind of breaks my heart that our our status is more important than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know. Do you have anything? I don't know if maybe you can add anything to that. But how can we make sure that our internal happiness, I guess, is strong enough for us not to care what others think of us? You know?
So that's so interesting when you were talking about how, for example, the one celebrity, was a part of what you remember, kind of like growing up with. I had someone similar to me as well. Was Anthony Bourdain. He was on the Food Network channel where he would just travel the world and try different food and met so many different people, and it was very envious to see the lifestyle he has. And then he struggled with mental health and committed suicide. To me, that was very heartbreaking because I remember growing up with him, watching him every day on TV after school, going home and watching it and telling myself, wow, I would love to do that. I would love to travel the world and eat all sort of food and be on TV. So that also hit home with me when you mentioned the celebrity that was very upsetting to you when he commits suicide. Back to your questions on what we can do to really resist and combat all that peer pressure from social media and the standards that is put out, especially when you're talking about young children, right? They don't know, they're not fully developed to understand those concepts. Whereas if you're older, hopefully you're educated enough and you're stronger to resist and learn how to deal with that. And it comes back to, people like us, educators, people who are trying to help, the younger generation and to teach and bring awareness to what we can do for our own mental health and physical health as well. Some of the things that I like to kind of teach my students is to learn gratitude, to have mindfulness. It's so simple, but it really does teach you abundance. It teaches you to be grateful for what you have. This way, you're not constantly comparing yourself and others. And if you really need to do things to help with your self-esteem and self-confidence, so for example, right now, another trend is the glow up, right? So it's more of a physical thing where you go from like an ugly duckling to a beautiful swan. And usually people use like makeup and then they really portray that on social media. I say, it's not just the physical part. You can do so many things to make yourself, to love yourself and to feel good about yourself, right? Internally and externally. So being your own cheerleader helps to combat some of those standards that's being bombarded onto you. So when you really value yourself and the little things that you do, you learn to appreciate your life and your actions more. So one thing that I will also have, my students do, for example, is when they're writing like a resume, instead of just writing a resume of your jobs, you're writing a resume with your accomplishment in life throughout. And then when you look at that, all those lists of accomplishments, you realize, wow, there's so much value that I can bring. There's so much potential that I have. And that will remind you of all the of all the things that you can accomplish.
Yeah, and I think
Wow.
there's a assignment, right, Sensei, that you have your students do almost day one, the shields.
Right.
That's kind of similar to that. And I think that sometimes we have, unfortunately, a lot of people suffer from low self-esteem.
Yes.
One of the things that I mentioned in the last podcast, and it just rings so true, is that to me, there's like a quiet pandemic that a lot of people don't hear about, and it's not really publicized so much. And that is that there is so much uh, psychological trauma, really, just a lot of there's a lot of mental illness in this country that you sometimes coming from New York, as a lot of us do here in this podcast, we see that it's evident all around us on the subway. We can see the physical manifestation of that, but there's a lot of it that people passing by us that we don't see, but it's there. It's quietly there, and people deal with that on an ongoing basis. Um, so to me, that's one of the things that I have to constantly be aware of, is that there's just so much of that in this country, and mental health in itself is so important. But the part of, we feel like, oh, we're not good enough, we haven't accomplished enough. But when you do those shields exercises, Sensei, the stuff that comes out of that, can you go into a little bit of that, and just how positive it can be?
Yeah. So one of the things that I make them do is to say five positive words about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and why. And usually people stop at two. They can't go past two. Sometimes they
Really?
get, yes. Sometimes they go to three, and after three, they just they can't. So one of the things that I help them with is, so what does it, you know, what what is something good that your girlfriend says about you? What is something good that your boyfriend says about you? What does your parents say? So that maybe if your parent says, I like the fact that you're so helpful around the house, well then that's a positive thing. Um, Maybe your boyfriend might say, one of the things that I like about you is that you love to listen, and without judgment. So that's another positive thing. So I have to get them to think in other areas of their lives, so that way they can at least come up with five positive things. And I also make them think about some accomplishments that that they have acquired throughout their lives, so they can bring back to the front that you know you're not so bad. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I agree with
You're not
that.
as bad
No,
as
that's wonderful.
you think. But one thing that you mentioned, Susan, is the gratitude part. And I have been using that now for maybe about, it's rather new, maybe about 2 months. Okay, the gratitude part. And I got to tell you, things have improved because you're absolutely right, Susan. You know, we're constantly looking at others. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others. And we forget that we have our own individual journey.
Yeah.
And and if I'm going to compare myself to someone, I'm going to compare myself to my friends and family who are no longer here. And, uh, and I should be grateful that I still am. Um, Even during this pandemic, I lost a couple of friends and a couple of family members, and uh, and these were friends that we frequent with, we danced with, and and now they're no longer here. So
Sorry.
I'm grateful that even at this age, because I'm at the age where I guess is the risk age factor,
Hmm.
and I feel strong as an ox.
Good.
Uh,
Good.
Thank you, thank you. So, and for that, I am grateful, and also, it helps me. It helps me with my relationship with my daughter. Um, because at times, she's a 25-year-old young lady, and I cannot control her anymore. I cannot. She does whatever she wants to do,
Hmm.
and at times I can be disappointed. It doesn't mean that I'm disappointed in her of her entirety, but I might be disappointed that she didn't call me today.
Hmm.
So by being grateful for the times that I do have with her, by being grateful for the times that I speak with her, by being grateful for all the things that I have around me, it really gives value to the things that I have. So gratefulness, I think, has been a great tool into my arsenal of behaviors that I'm instituting to create a better me. One day at a time.
Yes, I totally agree with that. It comes down to your mindset, right? So it comes down to your thoughts of being grateful and reflecting on everything that's going on to kind of give you like clarity to help you figure out what you want, who you are. Like that is a journey, and everyone is different, and I completely agree with that. If just tying back to even social media, I don't want people to think like social media it's an evil tool. Like you can use it, there's so many benefits to it. So when children are looking at that and they're looking at people posting pictures and they're like, I want that, I want to be that, you can turn and say to them, you can, if you set that as your goal, you work harder. Those people who are showing pictures of all the things that they have, they don't get that from just sitting on their phone and scrolling through social media. Those people got there because they work hard. They use that as their, I guess, their point to set a goal for themselves and say, this is what I want and this is how I'll get there. So you can use that, right? So like, for example, being envious can be both good and bad. It can breed jealousy, greed, or it can also breed motivation and really give you a source of inspiration.
No, thank you so much. That's a very good point. I'm going to use that moving forward. Take something that is positive and make it into, sorry, take something that is negative and make it into a positive. Those people didn't get to be as famous by swiping. There was
Exactly.
By
hard
accident.
work
Hmm.
behind it to make it look that way.
Yes.
So what are you going to do? What is the journey that you're willing to follow? What is the struggle, and what is the challenge that you're ready to face to make that look the way that looks?
And
Hmm.
and Susan, before we close out here, do you have any final tips, parting words for the audience, in terms of detoxing or anything that you want to share with them?
So, advice that I've been giving myself this year when it comes to, my own personal life, my work ethics, my relationships. It's all about a balance. It's about teaching yourself, educating yourself so you can find that balance. And, in regards to self-esteem and where you're at right now, you don't compare yourself to other people when we're in different part of the journey, right? So like you don't compare like your chapter 5 to someone else's chapter 40. So you have to remember we're all in different part of that journey, and as long as you keep at it, find that balance, right? You will be successful.
And thank you so much, Susan, with those
Yes.
wise words. We appreciate you being here with us today. You shared a lot of great points. I love your perspective on social media and your different point of view. So thank you so much, Susan.
Well, thank
And
you guys.
we look forward in having you join us sometime in the future with other interesting topics. But this today,
That'll be fun. This is great.
this
This
today
gives
was a
me your perspective
fascinating
as well.
episode. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And Master Roshi, any final words?
No, I think Susan said it all. You know, she really
Fantastic.
did. She did a tremendous job. Relating some of the things that have happened through her students, some of your students as well, Sensei. Me and my daughter as well. So we hope that people can take a lot of those tips away, and that it will be useful and helpful to them during these holidays that are coming up. So it'll be a great opportunity since you'll have hopefully a little bit more downtime, but not too much. They're going to be, going back to social media. So yeah, just use that time a little bit more useful, if you can, and more productive, I would say.
And folks, please press that like button if you like today's episode. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Master Roshi. And we'll meet again.
Uh,
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.